Welcome again to Faces of Sterling. I'm Terry Ackerman, your host, town administrator in Sterling, and each segment on this show we profile people from the community who are making a difference in Sterling. Today we are honored to have two guests from the Sterling Land Trust, Jim French, President, and Marion Larson on the Board of Directors of the Sterling Land Trust. Welcome.
Thanks for having us, Terry.
So Jim, let's start with you. What exactly is a land trust?
Well, a land trust is a private organization. It's a nonprofit organization. It's not a government entity, but we work with government entities and with private individuals. And there are quite a lot of land trusts in both individual towns and regional land trusts. So we're a Sterling-based specific land trust. Mm-hmm. There are some 140 land trusts in the state.
Really?
And interestingly enough, of the 1,200 or so land trusts nationwide, Massachusetts, one of the smallest states, comes in first as having the number of land trusts available for people to tap into.
That's nice.
Largely because we're a rather populous state. We're a 5 million acre state with 6 million residents, and so land trust work is very important, particularly in New England and in Massachusetts. So our role is to try to help landowners and municipalities protect open space for future generations to enjoy. So that's really our main goal.
So Jim, when and how was the land trust in Sterling started?
We're in our 14th year. We started in 1999 with a small group of us who thought it would be a good idea for Sterling to have a land trust. We wanted to get on the land trust bandwagon that was sort of sweeping the state, if you will. So back in those early days, we had one of the key founders was Ruth Hoffman, who was a pillar of the sort of conservation ethic here in town, being on the Conservation Commission, and then working with us to found the land trust. Mm-hmm. She was an avid open space advocate, so it was fun to work with her, and we miss her very much. Her grandson, Mike Pinio, is on our board now, so that's a great continuation of that family and its contributions to the land trust. And we've had a number of board members over those years that have all been fantastic. We bring a wide variety of expertise to the table. We've had farmers and scientists and planners and medical people and business people. So we have a great, well-rounded point of view from our board perspective over those 14 years. And as a result, we've been quite successful, I think.
So Marion, how did you come to get involved with the Sterling Land Trust?
Well, I moved into town about 14 years ago, actually, when I think about it. And I knew of the Sterling Land Trust. And a few years ago, Jim French gave me a phone call and said, would you come and give a presentation at our annual meeting about wildlife? And I said, sure. And I gave the presentation, and then afterwards they said, how would you like to join the board of directors? So word to the wise, if you get invited and you live in Sterling, you might get invited to do more than just give a talk.
Thankfully, she said yes.
All right. So why is it so important that we protect open space?
Well, I would start by answering the question this way, is that open space is really where we all come from. So if we don't have forests and wetlands and water bodies and clean water and clean air and wildlife and all those amenities that come with open space, then we're clearly an impoverished people. So open space enhances, a great deal of open space is protected in the name of water quality protection. Without clean water, we're all in a lot of trouble. So that's one of the primary reasons open space is protected. There's also all those amenities that are associated with open space in the form of wildlife habitat and populations, which Marion can certainly speak more to. It enhances the quality of life as a general statement in a town. You can, if you have large swaths of open space, it's visually appealing. It actually enhances property values in town.
Mm-hmm.
It's great for recreational purposes. I think everybody needs to have an opportunity to experience open space, whether it's in the form of fields or forests or wetlands or what have you. And the town of Sterling has a wealth of open space.
Absolutely, yes.
In general round numbers, Sterling is about a third of protected open space, which this map represents. It's about a third developed roughly, and about a third of the town is sort of waiting to see what the future will bring to it. So part of the main reason that we're involved in open space protection is to try to find the balance between the housing needs that we all have and the needs to maintain a strong, viable landscape for all of us to enjoy. So there's a lot of reasons why people want and enjoy open space, but that's just a few of them.
Mm-hmm.
And to speak to the wildlife end of things, to have open space for wildlife that looks different. And some kinds of wildlife need forests, some need fields, some need a mix of both. Some of the land also is protecting water, whether it's streams and rivers in town or along lakes, and that in turn protects the aquatic wildlife and also provides for some aquatic-based recreation.
So how much open space do we have in Sterling? And specifically, how much is owned by the Sterling Land Trust, and how do people access it?
I want everyone in Sterling to know just how lucky they are to live in this town, which is actually quite progressive in open space protection, more than a lot of towns. We can point to some towns in our immediate environs who have done a fraction of what we've done, and I mean this is a joint effort between the town itself, state agencies, and the land trust. So Sterling is basically a 20,000 acre town. There's about the sort of western half of town flows into the Wachusett Reservoir. So 57%, I think, of the town's 20,000 acres is within the Wachusett Reservoir watershed. The entire town eventually is on the Merrimack River watershed. A drop of rain that falls in Sterling enters the ocean up in Newburyport, the whole town. But half the town flows to the Wachusett Reservoir and is a drinking water supply for Greater Boston. And the other half via Weeki Peaky Brook and South Meadow Brook flow directly into the Nashua River below the Clinton Dam. So we're very cognizant of the water resources that Sterling contributes to the state. These large swaths of green on the western and southerly part of town are the Department of Conservation and Recreation, which in 1980, early 80s, they owned about 1,100 acres in town, a couple hundred acres underwater actually. The portion of the reservoir itself is in the lower southeast corner of town. In the last 25 years, DCR, Department of Conservation and Recreation, has added considerable acreage, and now it's up to about 5,700 acres.
Wow.
Is watershed land. Some of it's all open to the public for recreational purposes for certain passive uses. There's also a wealth of land in town that belongs to other entities under the guise of protected open space. There's a few hundred acres. There's this orange part here and this patch down here, agricultural preservation restrictions. These are farm. This is Tuttle Road. Some people in town may know that to agree with me that it's one of the prettiest scenes in the town of Sterling. Eric and Ann Starbid's Crystal Brook Farm and John Allen's farm. And this is the most recent agricultural preservation restriction in Sterling, which the Philbin family did, the Philbin Orchards. They have, in essence, sold their development rights to the Department of Agriculture in exchange for keeping those lands in agricultural production forevermore. There's also a lot of these other orange parcels are conservation restrictions, which I spoke about earlier, where people have donated or sold either to the land trust or to a state agency, and I think in a couple of cases to the town of Sterling, the conservation restrictions on those properties while they still hold ownership. And there's all, this is a large area up in here is the Wiki-Piki properties that belong to the town of Clinton, but there's a conservation restriction on those properties held by the Division of Fish and Wildlife. There's also a bit up here of Leominster State Forest, which is DCR State Parks Division. And Division of Fisheries and Wildlife also holds a couple of conservation restrictions up near Stewart Pond. The Sterling Land Trust, I should back up a moment and say there are also a number of properties in town that belong to the town, and they are managed under the aegis of the Conservation Commission.
Right.
They have a few hundred acres. The agricultural preservation restriction is about 375 acres. The Sterling Land Trust are these ones that show as SLT on them. A number of them are up along the Wiki-Piki drainage area, and there's one over here and one over here at Fitch Pond. This is a conservation restriction and an outright, again, a fee acquisition, donation by Gary Griffin of around Fitch Pond. He did a development over on the east side of it and donated some land to the land trust. Most recently, the land trust's most recent gift of property is 50 acres, which is these three parcels here up off of North Row Road, donated to the land trust by Georgia Drenova in her will. So after she passed away, she had about 80 acres, and she donated 50 to the land trust, and the balance was sold, and her beneficiaries enjoyed the results of that. So she sort of covered the bases. She spent her whole life there. It was a beautiful farm. It's the old Sterling Poor Farm, which some people may have heard of recently. So she really felt strongly that the farm that her dad bought and where she grew up, she wanted to see a good deal of it protected. So she came to the Sterling Land Trust. This parcel here belonged to Charlie Allen, who owned Ann and Eric Starbutt's farm before they did. And Charlie was a great benefactor for the Sterling Land Trust, giving this 19-acre parcel to the land trust, along with a very, very handsome endowment that we've been using to full advantage.
Right.
The Morris family donated this parcel over here off of Hardscrabble Road to the land trust in memory of their parents, the two Morris sisters. So that's the sort of thing that the land trust has enjoyed from.
And how do people access these properties?
Some of the land trust property that's owned in fee, the outright ownership, has access via trails. The Drenova property has rights of way off of North Row Road. Marion alluded to the fact that we had a trail clearing party this spring where we were creating some suitable access to this property. And once you get back in there, there's a series of trails on private land, land trust land, town and Sterling land, town forest land, APR land, agricultural preservation restriction, etc. The Wiki-Piki area up in this northern part of town is a fabulous, beautiful, largely unspoiled swath of open space. Yes. Some of the properties that have conservation restrictions on them, they're still in private ownership. Public access to those properties is up to the owner. If you ask the owner for permission to go on those properties, you'll probably get permission, but we have to defer to them. This Charlie Allen parcel has a trail network that we put on it after it was given to us, and that ties into the Wiki-Piki trail system as well. The Morris property, which is called a Hornbeam Conservation Area, is accessible via Hardscrabble Road. So most of these properties are accessible in and of themselves, and also tied into trail systems with other open space. So put it all together, and about 37% of Sterling is protected open space.
That's huge.
It's been great. Yeah. It's great, and there's more to do.
So tell us about some of the special events and activities at the Sterling Land Trust.
Well, there are several different kinds of things that we've been doing. We've had on our annual meetings speakers that come in to talk about anything having to do with open space or land, or in my case it was talking about wildlife or getting some people in wildlife. We had a birds of prey demonstration at one annual meeting. We arranged for somebody else to come in with whole bunch of different wild creatures, the Creature Teacher group. And then we've also had put out a call for folks to help us clear a right-of-way on the Drenova property. We have invited and are always looking for folks who are willing to take people out on walks to introduce them to some of the open space in town, whether it's our properties or some of the other properties that are open.
One example I could give is this spring when we had that work party on the Drenova right-of-way project, we were treated to a guided hike through the Wiki-Piki Trail system by Peter Peterson, and it was well attended. I think we had about 30 people came, and it was a fabulous hike.
Great.
And also in the past, on occasion, we've led hikes. Sometimes it's great to do it in October for foliage and that sort of thing. So we always try to find ways to bring people together to enjoy the open space that Sterling has. I could also add that the Land Trust is also working in consort with the Lancaster Land Trust. This is new to our experience. Through an AmeriCorps effort, the National River Watershed Association helped us hook up with the folks in our sister town, the Lancaster Land Trust, and we're working together to find ways to work with landowners to do landowner outreach along the Wiki-Piki as well, since the Wiki-Piki flows from Sterling through Lancaster to the Nashua River.
Right.
So we're trying to work with our neighboring towns as well.
That's great.
It's a great way to connect properties and corridors for wildlife and for people. And the Wiki-Piki is a very important stream on the fisheries and the aquatic side, because it does host native brook trout and other cold water loving critters that are not found in a whole lot of different places. And again, because of the relatively unspoiled nature of that stream, protecting the land along there will keep those critters alive and will also contribute to clean water and our quality of life.
Right.
And one of the things we're cognizant of is that the Wiki-Piki has a great deal of land protected on it, but it also has a great deal of land that is as yet not protected officially. So there are certainly landowners who own property in the Wiki-Piki who are protecting it in their own right, but in order to take that a step further, they have these options where they could work with the land trust or the town or a state agency to protect some of this land in perpetuity if they wish, and to enjoy the benefits that comes with that. So, and it's, I think, worth noting that the town of Sterling is on what Mass Audubon calls the sprawl frontier, where we're situated in Sterling, in Massachusetts. We're feeling the pressure of the development pressure, and it's been relaxed a little bit the last few years, but it'll certainly return. So the time is nigh for us to pay close attention to any and all opportunities to protect land in our town before they're lost to other uses that may not be as compatible.
So what are some of the ways that Sterling residents can get more involved and support the Land Trust?
Well, we're an all-volunteer organization. We're entirely dependent upon donations, both in terms of working capital, and we accept land donations. There's different ways people can contribute. So financially, of course, as a nonprofit organization, we need funds in order to carry on our mission, which in part is we provide a venue for people who want to donate interests in land for conservation purposes. So for instance, if a landowner wants to see to it that their land, and oftentimes it's land that's been in the family for multi-generations, that seems to be a common theme. They have a real sense of propriety, a sense of place. What can they do? We've had land donated to the Land Trust outright. Oftentimes it's as a memorial to a family member who's passed away. That's a common reason that people will give property to land trusts. Also, conservation restrictions, where you don't actually give the land directly to a land trust, but you give the development rights. In other words, the land trust isn't going to use those rights to develop the land, but they will hold those rights so that the land will remain an open space for perpetuity.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way to protect the landscape and the land without having it go into uses that run counter to what the people really want to see happen to the property.
Right.
So we can help people facilitate that. There are different ways that you can protect land. You can work with a land trust, or you can work with a town, typically through a conservation commission, or you can work with state agencies that are environmentally oriented agencies.
Mm-hmm.
All of these entities can help landowners in various ways, but each state agency has a mandate, whether it's water supply protection or wildlife habitat or recreation or beaches or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
So they have the wherewithal and funds available to work with landowners to try to meet those mandates. If your land doesn't meet those criteria, or if you choose not to work with a state agency,
Mm-hmm.
you can turn to a municipality for pretty much the same reasons, or you can turn to a private nonprofit organization such as the Sterling-Land Trust and work with them to protect your land. So we've had a number of properties donated to the land trust, both in fee, it's a term that means outright donation
Mm-hmm.
of the property,
Mm-hmm.
and the land trust also has received these so-called conservation restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
In pretty much all those cases, we will work with the landowner to see that they get tax benefits for the donative value of these rights into property, both through federal and state tax vehicles. We can help them realize some gains so that their magnanimity, if you will, can be rewarded through various means, typically through taxation. It also affects, in some cases, the property's consequence as far as what people have to pay for taxes on the property to the municipality.
Right.
So there's a lot of different benefits for landowners to consider protecting their land. And we're here to help them sort
Great.
of sort through that maze of how best to do it and how to best benefit from it.
Some other ways that people can help Sterling residents and others interested in protecting Sterling's open space is they can volunteer their time. We had a work crew out cutting and hacking and slashing on some of the right of way on some property here that needed to be opened up. We could really use some help on our website, and if there are somebody in town or out of town that would like to help us with our website and updating some of the information there, we're definitely looking at those kinds of things.
That would be great.
That'd be fabulous. And speaking of the website, our website address is www.sterlinglandtrust.org.
And if I may add, we also very much appreciate folks who want to volunteer. You may not be a landowner or someone who wishes to donate interests in your land, but you may want to help us out. And that can be any number of things, such as bookkeeping or website design or trail clearing or maintenance of properties or that sort of thing. So we're always looking for hands-on help from young and old.
All right, and
Everyone's
the best
welcome.
way for people to find out about the land trust is the website, or
Yeah, they can look at the website. They can call me at 978-422-5162, or email Marion, Marion 46 at verizon.net.
terrific. I want to thank you for coming on the show today, Jim French and Marion Larson from the Sterling Land Trust.
Thanks for
Thanks,
having
Terry. It
us.
was a great opportunity.
And I want to thank the viewers at home for watching, and thank the crew today from SLCT. I'm your host, Terry Ackerman, Town Administrator. This is Faces of Sterling. We'll see you next time.